Hi guys, back to part of something real. I've sort of figured out a workaround for the moment for for uploading these videos. So, okay, I'm back in it. But I wanted to share with you guys something really positive. I saw in the spirit a hand take a hold of a transmission gear shift stick, and boom, boom, boom. It went from, like, I guess it was second to third, or it might have been, yeah, I think it was like second up to third fast, and then down to fourth. So it went 2 gears quickly. Okay. So that was the day. Was that yesterday? Yeah. When I said God was like, lay down, and it was like, bum, 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 five different things. That was one of the things, but there were a couple that I remember. I said, I'm not sure what this means, and I don't even know if I remember it correctly. So last night when I was praying in bed at night, God brought it back to my remembrance, because I was saying to the Lord, I know this is all like TMI, but I was saying to the Lord last night in bed, what was that you showed me yesterday? I know I missed a couple things in that string of visions. What? So then he showed me that. Y'all, then he brought up Job. I'm just going to be so real with you people. My peeps, my birds. Last night I was saying to God, you know what? It's like you've left me out just to be beaten, to be tortured, to be hurt, to be neglected. It's like you've left me out in the sun to just bleed and just wither away. That's what I told the Lord. And I was just being real talk with God. And he didn't say, I'm sorry. God's so real. But he brought to my spirit Job, right? We all know Job. I mean, what I've read was that Job was the wealthiest individual in the ancient world. And when the enemy basically went to God and said, well, Job only loves you because you've made him wealthy and you've protected him against all our attacks. And God went, okay. So I really want you to check this out. And that is, when God allowed everything to be taken from Job, and Job was basically in a torture chamber for a season of his life, what came from that was much glory to God. Remember, at the end of Job, the whole flippin' town comes out, and it's so obvious to the town that God has restored Job, and that Job was not some creeper, perv, whatever the gang stalkers have lied about you on, whatever filthy, foul bag of lies they've spread about you. At the end of your Job season, it's going to be so obvious to the community that you were a part of, that shamed you, that God was with you the whole time, and that those lies were not right, that they were lies. So like when Elihu and, when Job's buddies came to visit him, and they were all talking all their fancy philosophy talk, they were like bloviating. Anyways, I thought, but at the end of all their bloviation, they kind of blamed Job. Like, well, clearly, sir, you've done something to earn all this bad karma, right? You've done something to earn it. It's come back around to you. God's punishment is here because you've done bad deeds. But the thing is, what kind of friends were these people if they didn't know Job's character? Now, they had to travel quite a bit to get to him. So, okay, maybe they weren't in his life, every day, and they didn't really know him. But, like know him because they were around him all the time. I'm not sure. But they basically were kind of like, you did something wrong, So, but in the end, all the town folk that were staring at Job's downfall, all the people at your work that heard all the rumors and were like watching you like you're some, pariah, parasite, they're going to go, oh my gosh, obviously God is with the birds on part of something real, because they be just high and mighty now. They just got a promotion to this amazing job. They just got this plum assignment in Europe. Oh, they just, started a business and it's going gangbusters. Oh, they just got married and bam, now they're pregnant with twins. Whatever. It's going to become very obvious to the crowd that, the lies weren't true. God would not reward you so mightily if you were just this totally awful, person. So what's going to happen is you're going to go from second to fourth gear, bam, really fast. And I think I did a video the day before yesterday or sometime where I said, hey, when God gives you that first blessing, and you're funded to some degree, okay? Bam! You know what you're going to do with that. Boom. You're going to invest in your business, if you have any debts, you're going to pay those, you're going to pay your bills, you're going to get all caught up, and you're just going to get in there and do what God wants you to do. So that's what the second to fourth was. So even though I didn't get it and see it and do a video on it, I did talk about some other video. God was percolating it somewhere. It was getting into my weak mind. The seeds were getting in there of fast acceleration. Like when the green light hits, just go. Just that's what I said before. Just put your foot on the gas and go. Because you have been held up. And that was all Satan's plan, But God was like, whatevs, God wouldn't have allowed Job to be tortured and tested in such a way if he did not have full faith and massive belief and trust that Job was going to outlast, outact, that Job's tenacity would not win out in the end. And so, child of God, bird, if you have been left out in the sun to just bleed out and dry out and just, you feel tortured, you felt just hated by God. I mean, I've said that to God, like, do you hate me, Lord? I've said that over these last few years. So if you too have been in that position, it's more like, and I didn't really know that until today. Okay. Okay. Today I heard a gal that I don't hear all the time, but she came out and she talked about Job, and that's what got my ears all whoa, because I had just been fully like hearing from the Lord about Job last night. But she said, yeah, God wouldn't have allowed all that testing for Job if he didn't have full confidence and faith that Job was going to totally show up and show out for God, that Job was going to outshow the enemy and all of his deepest, darkest strategies, plots, and plans. Job outlasted it all. Even when Job's wife, gem that she was, told Job, why don't you just go crawl off somewhere under a rock and die? That's what Job's wife told him to do, right? She'd had it by then, she was quite done herself. But he didn't take her advice, and y'all, many folk would fold. Okay, under what we've gone through. Deprivation, starvation, degradation, scorn, right? That litany that I give out a lot of times. So because we've survived all that, we are going to be rewarded. It's dare I say, it's like Jesus when he went through gang stalking, persecution, deprivation, scorn, humiliation, being ostracized. He was gang stalked by the elites, by the Sanhedrin, by those jokers. Now the Bible says that a few secretly believed in him and came onto his side, Team Jesus' side. So this satanic Illuminati government cult that has gone after you, if you've arrived at the knowledge that was going on, that not only was your family hunting you with their little, collaboration of, witch doctors, and root doctors, and Okay, their little witchcraft gang. Not only were they going after you, if you're in my boat, there was also a government club that was like a cult, and they have been the ones also after you, going after your business, going after your own personal safety, your life. And God knew that, if he could, of course he can, if he protects you, you will just hunker down and stay true to him the entire time. Now, you're a human, so you might question God and be like, how much do you hate me, God? Or God, why do you allow me to just get brutally beaten up out here in the world? Well, the thing is, those things happen to Jesus. Now, are we anywhere near Jesus? No. We're not perfect and we're not Jesus and, blah, blah, blah. But Jesus did go through all of that, as I just said. And to complete that point, after he was, brutally punished by that gang stalking gang, the Sanhedrin, and he was allowed to be sacrificed, because that's what they do. They want to sacrifice you. They use their satanic ways of doing it, but they also put out contracts. They pay people to take you out. Okay, now you were protected. None of that worked, because God has a purpose and a plan for your life, and he wants to use you an example to draw many eyes to God. The cult has shriveled up, and they're probably, most of them are still evil, but a few, just like the few in the Sanhedrin, went to Team Jesus' side. A few of these cult members, and maybe a few of your friends and family, a few are going to go to God's side because of this whole endeavor that has been going on, and they've been witnessing and watching for the last few years. Okay, so a few of the dark insiders are going to be saved because of you, child of God, just like it was in the days of Jesus's actual crucifixion chapter in his life. But see, that was all such an illumination to the disciples when he taught them after he resurrected. Did you know that he did like a discipleship school after he resurrected? He did that. So when he taught them, like, yo, this is the dealio. This is the matrix, that started, when Lucifer was hurled out of the sky and he started polluting, and contributing to Cain. God said, why are you listening to the devil? So the devil was working on Cain to get that first murder going. Okay, so ever since then, there's been this matrix of our vulnerability as insecure people, okay, when we're not healed up and we don't align with God in every day of our life. We don't align with him, then we become vulnerable to insecurities and comparison and, greed and, whatever else. But that's when these disembodied dark energies, these demon entities, the Bible calls them unclean spirits, or wicked spirits, or demons. Anyways, they come around and they try to capitalize on your weaker, darker, kind of sabotagey side of yourself. And so Jesus was mightily rewarded after he went through all of that testing and persecution and gang stalking. Yes, he gave his life, but the whole plan was that he would pay the penalty for sin. Something divine has got to cover sin, because sin equals death. It always will equal death. Think about that. Sin equals death, because divinity is perfect. There is no dark, smelly, disgusting cancer in heaven. It doesn't exist there. So to let in people who dibble and dabble in all kinds of things, we're not perfect and we make mistakes and we do bad, wrong things. In order for us to reconnect with heaven, we have to be made white. We have to be made clean. And the only thing that will kill that, the only thing that kills the killer, is God. God is the one who's over all of that. God's over sin. So he's the only one that can wipe it out, blot it out, make it white. Okay. And he did it with the divine, perfect love of Elohim, of himself. He saved us. He saved his creation. He's the only one that can. There were no other council members up in heaven. There were no other Elohim. There were no other divine beings that either made that offer to God, like I will go and I will pay the price for humanity to be reconciliated to heaven, or maybe they offered, but they just weren't pure. They just didn't have that golden service heart that Jesus had. Y'all, many of those people up in heaven are never going back to heaven. Okay, a third of them were hurled out to be tied into prison for all time. That's not even including the high council. And then the book of Enoch talks about 7 other spirits that have been jailed. So you got 7. Then you got the 250 that left that were on the council. That's almost 260 right there. You have Lucifer, and then you have a third of the angels. So there were many, 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 many divine beings up there that that rebelled. Many rebelled. And then we have all the disembodied spirits that were in the pre-flood epic time frame of our planet that are unclean. It's only Noah and the 8 that went forward because everybody had become completely twisted and dark and cannibalistic, and they were all contaminated and polluted by this crazy hybrid DNA of the Watchers. Those 250 that mixed their DNA with women. That was not normal human DNA. Those people are lost. Now they're disembodied, and they just try to corrupt us. So they and the humans that work with them, knowingly or unknowingly, make up the matrix. But I did do a video where I said, man, there's people leaving the matrix. So I don't know if this is just like an end time kind of move that God's making, where he's allowing many people to be like Job's. He's allowing a lot of Job situations to go down. Why? Because when one child of God is made an example like Job, what ends up happening in the end is that cults dissolve, okay? Many people get judged for their wicked ways. That's one of God's missions, is he's going to judge the wicked. So he will use believers, and I'm sure it's been going on before Jesus's time and all the way since Jesus's time up till now, but maybe it's happening a lot more now. I'm not sure. We're hearing about it now because of YouTube and whatnot, but when God vindicates, because this is all in the Bible, when God vindicates a child of God, many people get judged for their wicked ways. So boom, a few will turn to God. Satan is humiliated. All of Satan's demonic friends, those dark energy entities, they are humiliated. They lose out. And then child of God wins, just like Jesus won. Jesus won the rulership of our world. When he comes back, he will rule, period, for all time. So, Jesus is going to win big time because of his sacrifice and his obedience to God the Father and what he did on earth and what he suffered through. So you, child of God, like Job, you are going to benefit financially, with your family, with your calling. In every way, you're going to benefit, okay? And it is going to happen quickly, okay? 2nd to 3rd to 4th, boom, go.